Hello and welcome to the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. I am your host and beat reporter, and I have been your beat reporter covering the Jacksonville Jaguars for On SI every single day since August 2019. And we are continuing to move forward to another offseason together. As always, you can find all of our 100% free 24/7 boots on the ground content covering the Jacksonville Jaguars every single day when you follow us on social media such as Facebook or Twitter at Jaguars on SI. You can also find us at www.si.com/NFL/Jaguars. All right, folks, welcome to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley, your host and beat reporter. Today, we're going to be talking about 3 reasons to be optimistic about the Jaguars heading into the 2025 season. Obviously, last year's 4-13 season was a complete debacle for the Jaguars. Arguably one of the worst years of the entire ownership of owner Shad Khan, considering the expectations the Jaguars had heading into the year, considering they made Trevor Lawrence the highest paid player in franchise history in the offseason, made Josh Hines-Allen the second highest paid player in franchise history and the highest paid defender in franchise history, and made Tyson Campbell the highest paid defensive back in franchise history, all in one offseason. And it all resulted in a 4-13 season and the firings of head coach Doug Peterson and later the ousting of general manager Trent Baalke. So why should the Jaguars be more optimistic heading into 2025 after a complete, really nightmare scenario in the 2024 season? The first reason I think for optimism has to actually revolve around just how bad things were in 2024. 10 of the Jaguars' 13 losses were by only one score. That is a staggering amount. It set a modern NFL record for most one-score losses in a season. Had the Jaguars had the ball go their way in even half of those games, you're looking at a 9-8 football team instead of a 4-13 one. So the Jaguars obviously had a lot of things go wrong for them last year, but one of those things simply is luck. They were a very unlucky team. Now, how much of that is luck? How much of it is lack of talent, lack of coaching, and just failing to execute in big moments? That's certainly all up for debate, but it's kind of been proven in past years that teams can bounce back pretty quickly from being one-score losers the year before. A lot of times, just the pendulum swings the other way around, and the team that was extremely unlucky the year before, things kind of balance out the next year. So I think the Jaguars had very legitimate issues at the core and root of their team and their DNA as an organization, which is ultimately why they went 4-13. But this was a team that was better than 4-13 on paper. And the fact that they lost so many one-score games despite having so many injuries at quarterback, at wide receiver, despite having one of the worst defenses in the NFL, is actually a relatively encouraging sign for the Jaguars moving into next season. I think that if you're the Jaguars, you can't just assume your luck in one-score games is about to do a complete 180 just by sheer nature. Like, the Jaguars have to have something to do with it. They have to improve playing in close games. They simply, have to be better at finishing when it comes to the really critical moments of games. That's something they've struggled at really for the last 2 years, but especially last year. But the fact that this Jaguars team, while record-wise was a disaster last year, was really just a handful of plays away from being near 500, if not even better, should give the Jaguars some hope that they're not starting from complete ground zero in 2025, that, there still is something in the franchise that was on the roster last year that is a positive sign and is a building block moving forward. So simply put, the fact that they went 0-10 and not 0-10, but that they lost 10 one-score games last year, you shouldn't expect that to repeat. Instead, you should probably expect that number to be slashed, whether it's in half, whether that's by, 40%. One way or another, that number is going to come down. And that alone should be an encouraging sign for the Jaguars heading into 2025. Then I think, for the second reason for optimism for the Jaguars, it simply has to be the man they hired to be head coach, Liam Cohen. Now, the Jaguars, in my opinion, have a lot of things they've done this offseason to get excited about. James Gladstone has obviously won a lot of fans with his moves to land Travis Hunter at number 2 overall in April's NFL draft. But for as important as I think Gladstone and Hunter and EVP Tony Brazzelli and their free agency class and so many other people are, I think Liam Cohen is right there with Trevor Lawrence as the most important people in this franchise today as it pertains to who will determine whether or not they have success moving forward on the football field. I think with Liam Cohen, obviously he has to prove some things. You know, it's his first year as a head coach. He has to prove he can lead a locker room. He has to prove he can lead a team when it faces adversity, game management, all those things. But simply put, landing Liam Cohen, the offensive mind, Liam Cohen, the play caller, was a massive boon for the Jaguars. He's only been an offense coordinator for, I believe, 2 seasons at the NFL level, did it for 2 at the college level. But he's the reason Will Levis's name ever got floated as a potential first-round pick. He's the reason that Baker Mayfield, in my opinion, is now seen as like a top 12 to 15 quarterback instead of just being another guy. He took a Tampa Bay offense that was okay the year before and made it arguably elite. And Dave Canales had all the same weapons other than like Bucky Irving and Graham Barton. You know, he was working with the same main ingredients that Liam Cohen was, but Liam Cohen just did it significantly better. If Liam Cohen is the offensive mind the Jaguars think he is, he legitimately could be the next Sean McVay level play caller. And he did so many things in Tampa, in my opinion, with the running game, with Mayfield, with the skill players and how he kind of schemed up production for them, that should give you hope and optimism heading into the season that he can do the same for the Jaguars, that he can do the same for Trevor Lawrence, for their offensive line, for their skill players. I believe Liam Cohen has the potential and the capacity to be one of the best offensive minds and offensive play callers really in football in general. And that is based, you know, on the success that he's had at Kentucky, Tampa Bay, his time with Sean McVay. I think he's the real deal as an offensive mind and as a play caller, and I think he has to be one of the biggest reasons to be optimistic. And then finally, for me, the final reason that I think it's worth being optimistic when it comes to the Jaguars and really the situation they're facing has to be, simply put, the AFC South in general. The AFC South, simply put, over the last several seasons and really the last decade or so, has just been one of the weaker divisions in the NFL. A lot of times, the Jaguars did it in 22, the Texans did it in 2023. 9-8 can win the division, and I believe that can be the case again this year. I mean, just look at things. The Tennessee Titans are coming off being the worst team in football. There's still very legitimate and genuine concerns on if Brian Callahan's actually any good or not. I think Cam Ward's going to be a good quarterback, but still, you're a rookie quarterback being placed on the worst team in football. We saw how that worked with Bryce Young. We saw how that worked with Caleb Williams. We saw how that worked with Trevor Lawrence. The list really goes on and on, you know, from there in terms of number 1 pick quarterbacks. So I think Cam Ward is going to be a good player. I think he's going to make a lot of plays as a rookie, but do I necessarily think the Tennessee Titans are going to win many games? No, I do not. Then you look at the Indianapolis Colts, who already have, in my opinion, one of the league's worst quarterback situations in Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. It doesn't seem like there's a right answer there. And then it was made even worse and compounded by, you know, the absolute best case scenario for them would be for Richardson to prove he's the guy, but then he gets another injury during the offseason program. And while I'm sure, you know, he'll be back in time for training camp, he's not a guy who can miss time, who can miss reps. And if the Colts just roll Daniel Jones, then it just feels like another kind of bleh and wasted season from Indianapolis. And then finally, the Houston Texans. Obviously, C.J. Stroud's a great quarterback. DeMeco Ryans is a great head coach. But offensive line, some serious questions about it. They had a really weird offseason. They added a lot of old guys, a lot of guys who aren't really starter-level players, even though they added them to starter-level roles. So I think Houston has some serious flaws along their roster this year. We'll see if Stroud and Ryans, how well they mask them. But I think they're far from a perfect team, even if they are the presumed division winner. So I think lastly, just knowing that the AFC South has two teams who will likely finish under 500 and then a third team in the Texans who have a lot of issues just doesn't seem like a very intimidating division to me. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode of the Jacksonville Jaguars Insider Podcast. My name is John Shipley. Please give us a like, follow, subscription, whatever you have to do on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all other platforms. And you can also find all of our podcasts and other videos, press conferences, interviews, etc. on YouTube when you follow us at Sports Videos on SI.